I'm not who you think I am. Whoa.
Okay, this is gonna hurt, but I'm still practicing, and we'll see if I can make this simple to comprehend. Because nobody has refuted this, so they must not understand it. I'm open to being refuted, but I think if you just receive the obvious implications of this, you'll let certain views go if you have them. So again, I'm trying to make this, let's see if I can zoom in even more. I'm trying to make this simple. I'm open to being corrected because I came up with this myself. So I didn't get it from my church or something. Okay, so the time periods in Daniel in the text, time times and half a time, 3.5 years, because that's a time 1 times 2, and half a time is 0.5. That's 3.5. First brought up in Daniel 7 regarding the Rome, the fourth beast. It's time times and half a time, and then that's associated in Revelation 11, 12, 13, etc. And also listed amongst other time periods in the Daniel 12, etc. We have, most people agree, at least to some degree, they're related, if not the same thing, that the time times half a time, the 3.5 years, the 12, which would be in a certain kind of rendering, 42 months, 1,260 days. Yes, a 3.5 year period is 42 months. 3.5 times 12 is 42. If every day has 30 days in it, then 42 months or 3.5 years is also 1,260 days. If you have 12 months every year, per year, and each one of those months has 30 days in it every month, but guess what? That would be a lunar calendar. That is only a lunar calendar. But even then, that's not technically correct, because lunar cycles do not have 30 days in them. They have 29.5. What does that mean? That means in real life, the Jews never used a year that had 12 months every single year, with months in it, every month having 30 days in it. Not only is that not a viable calendar, but from Daniel's time to the first century until now, even ongoing, the Jews didn't use a calendar that has that, or the Jews didn't use a lunar calendar in real life, literal calendar. They didn't literally use it. So what does that mean? That means from year to year, there never was 360 days in a year. So what are we to do? And okay, if you look at the screen, a lunar year is 360 days because it's 12 months with 30 days each. Now, I'm not saying the Bible doesn't use a lunar calendar. It does, and in here. And we can't, maybe before the flood or whatever, that's all, we don't know. We can't prove that. But what I've said so far is just known, accepted, undisputable facts, okay, about what the Jews used. We know what they used. We have their writings. We have it in the Bible even. So what am I saying? I'm saying logically, we know they couldn't have used it. By account of what the Bible says, we know they didn't use it in literal history, that is, from year to year, in their actual day-to-day living as a people. As they calculated when the festivals were, they did not use a lunar calendar. They used a lunisolar. So there's implications here. But so far, I'm just telling you just undisputable facts. This isn't an interpretation. So don't plug your ears. I promise to tell you when there's any interpretation. The facts are, no scholars disagree, basically. I mean, I can't say none, but there's virtually nobody even tries to argue with this. There's so many reasons for that I don't want to get into, but okay, so a lunar year is 360 days according to the Bible. A lunisolar year would be yes, you use the lunar cycles as the Jews did. They sighted the moon from within a year of living in real life. When you sight the moon, then that's the beginning of that month, and then you're a certain day of the month is their like the 15th day or whatever is a holiday based on the sighting of the moon within a single year, month to month. But it's a lunisolar because they adjusted the length of their months and also added a 13th month every so often in order to keep from shifting away from the seasons. Why is that? Well, because the Bible said they had to, because the Passover must be in the spring, because the Feast of Weeks, or the feast where they wave the sheaf offering, is tied to this is one reason that's just obviously why the Bible says this. It's because it has to be in the spring. And if you just counted 360 days and then started your year over, you would fall 5 days behind a fixed point in the seasons every year until you drifted out of season. So they had to make adjustments. Not only did they have to logically, but we know they did, and we know the Bible said they did, and we know historically they did, and we know they still do. All those things are true. So for those of you who render the time periods in Daniel and Revelation, which are lunar, purely lunar, it's just it's outright false, because they can't be literal, because literal means there is no symbol there. It's 360 days is 360 days. A year is a real year. And of course, these time periods matter because they're actually talking about real history that either has occurred or will occur. So it can't be literal. So don't say it's literal. I'm saying literal because you do. You have to say it's symbolic, because their years didn't actually literally have a lunar rendering. We know that historically, biblically, and logically. Okay. So you got to figure out how it's symbolic, and the days stand for literal days, and yet it's not literal days associated with literal years, because they didn't actually have. That's not a literal thing they did. They never had a year with 360 days in it. Never. The other thing is, if you say they're literal, then you're saying they're not symbolic. That means when it says it's a day in real life. Okay, well, no. Because no matter where you start a time period in literal Jewish history, in real life, ever, will 3.5 years have 42 months? That is, because they add a 13th month, 7 out of every 19 years, and they space them out. But even no matter how you space it out, over a 3.5 year stretch, no matter what month you start your clock in, whatever month, doesn't matter, pick your month. I did the math, demonstrated in another video. Because of the 13th month, there is nowhere you can start a 3.5 year time clock and have 42 months in that 3.5 year period. You're going to get, because of the 13th month, you're going to have at least 43. That's the best you can do. Sometimes, depending on where you started a 3.5 year period, you would have actually 44 months, but you can never get 42 months in 3.5 years ever, based on how they actually rendered literal historical time in their entire history from when Daniel wrote until even today. Ever. Never. So what am I saying? I'm saying, therefore, the time which everybody acknowledges are associated with each other, the 3.5 years is the 1,260 days, is the 42 months, cannot be literal. Because literal means, when it says 42 months, it means 42 months. But if the 42 months is the 3.5 years, it can't be. Because we know what the 69 month in Daniel's 70 week prophecy. If you believe the 70th week is in the future, and that the time period is in some way associated with that, the 70th week, and that's what the 1260 is associated with, that literal time, we know what the 69 weeks were. They were literal historical weeks of years. Those years did not have 360 days in them per year, none of them. So if the 70th week of Daniel is the week that was also the 69 weeks, the same, it's a part of those weeks, and we know those 70 weeks, those 69 weeks passed and predicted Jesus, even though you can't even make that work on your futurist model, that so that it's actually historically accurate according to what God prophesied, which is a problem. But there is a view that does. But if the 69 weeks were the first 69 weeks of the 70-week prophecy, we know historically, in literal time, that those years didn't have 360 days in them. What would give you then to say you can count the 70th week, that's part of that prophecy, in literal history, to have 360 days per year? It didn't. They never did. We know what the first 69 weeks had in them, and it had 354 on the 12-month years or 384 on the 13-month years. Give plus or minus 1 day, as you can see on the screen there. Because they had to make adjustments. You can actually read it in Jewish writings and in the Bible to a certain degree. And we know they did because we can correlate their years and their history with other histories, through scholarship has done this. So we know they weren't. We know that for instance, the Islamic Muslim people have a purely lunar calendar, and it messes up their year-to-year thing. It shifts. Their Ramadan and stuff would shift because they stuck to a purely lunar calendar. But we know the Jews did not. So and those prophecies were for the Jews in their original context. The day for a year prophetic interpretation is the only viable model that doesn't turn the Bible into false predictions. If the 1260 days is the 3.5 years, and you're saying it's literal, but 3.5 years isn't really actually 1260 days, but you claim the prophecy is a literal, you're saying the Bible literally got it wrong. But if you understand that apocalyptic literature uses symbols, and that we know that they used a symbolic calendar to render their time, then you know that the days don't represent literal days. The days represent literal years. And a literal year is not 360 days per year. And so if you understand what I'm saying, and you believe the Bible is accurate and that prophecy doesn't fail, then you will throw away your faulty eschatology. And I invite you to do that.